Welcome to the Demystifying Technology podcast from the MacLaurin Group.
Typically, you go through the due diligence process. What the world of private equity
right. Can't wait. Demystify it.
On this week's Demystifying Technology episode, Jim and Alan continue their conversation in this two-part series about hiring for the top technology position within a portfolio and the challenges posed for candidate and hirer alike. I encourage you to check out the first of this series if you have not already done so. Now let's join Jim and Alan for this spine-tingling discussion.
Welcome back. Thank you, Jim. We're back again to talk about the second part of technical recruitment.
I've been staying awake at night in an eager anticipation of this conversation.
You and many others. Right, so the last time we talked about the current needs of the engineering team, keeping the lights on, and how the current engineering leadership is 9 times out of 10 probably not the leadership that you're looking forward to going forward, because you're in a PE world now. So you're under a huge different set of requirements from your role now that people generally are not used to. So you grow into this role, you don't suddenly get into it. So what are we looking for from the CTO or the VP of engineering in a PE portfolio company?
Yeah, it changes drastically at the moment that they step into that portfolio company, right? Because the person responsible for that technology is, number one, not going to upset the apple cart so much that 3 years from now, they're not in a position to potentially roll that company out of their portfolio, right? Anything that the CTO decides they're going to take on has to make sense, has to be logical, has to be financially viable, but there are time constraints there. They don't want to see a 7-year project on the table when they're looking to potentially recoup their investment in 3 to 5 years. They're also eager to have whoever's in place and is capable of stepping aside. Quite often they're going to look at tuck-in acquisitions, right? And they're going to bring on a new organization. And that CTO will have to be able to just step right into that new world and understand, how can I integrate this into my existing platform? And they may take the reins of 2 organizations at that point. And if they're so mired in the existing organization, they can't step out to keep this thing running.
Yes, and that's a very important distinction there, because you now are in this loop of buying and selling companies. That's what a PE firm does. They buy and sell companies. So to them, to buy another company, that's just their day's work. So it's very common for a smaller company to become a bigger company through acquisition. And whether you're acquiring sales or your engineering or technology or something, there's going to be an engineering component to that most of the time, particularly at these sort of levels. And you could find that your engineering team doubles the next morning. And it could be in a completely different stack, as you noted, from what you're completely used to. So you now need to be of a mindset to where, can the current engineering team do without me? So really a good CTO is somebody that's horrendously dispensable. But if they're always the person that's in the engine, that's either doing the pull requests or doing the pushes to production or fixing the bugs or doing the support problems, that's not a CTO that's going to scale with this business.
Right. Well, and to a large extent, that day one, they will get their hands really dirty, right? And you bring in a CTO to an organization day one, they're going to have to dig in and get into the meat of the matter to understand, what have I just inherited? Whether that be the first day on the job or for that new acquisition. The ability to do that, to quickly surmise, this is where the gaps in this platform are. They need to be self-sufficient, because at that point in time, you're bringing in this new CTO. But when that organization gets acquired, the CEO role has changed substantially, right? And you think about how that changes. And that the CEO is no longer the guy who's doing product development or is helping to oversee the technology decisions.
Yeah, they're not as hands-on as usual, because they've now got their own bosses to report to, right, and move this company to a strategic level. So yes, they don't have the time to spend in their own business in many respects. They got to delegate a lot and have that delegation be people that can be very self-sufficient.
That resource who comes in the door is, they have to be fully equipped. It's not just, I understand technology. I understand how this business is planning to move forward. I can understand how the technology integrates into that product and business roadmap so that I can develop my own technology roadmap. Also understands what is the short-term objective of the private equity firm. They're going to have to understand how does that, when that private equity firm made that acquisition, what was their vision for where that company needs to be 3 to 5 years out?
Yeah, are they growing sales? Are they moving into new territories? What do we need to do to make sure the platform can actually not be a crux to the business getting to where they need to go? And have that line of sight to be able to get a little bit ahead of things. Is there parts of the platform that need to be rewritten? A lot of the times that we see it's not necessarily the platform needs rewritten, although there are large chunks that are old and unsupported platforms, etc. Yes. But a lot of it is to do with even simple things like, is the current data center holding us back because we have to buy hardware? We've got to maintain hardware and in that business. Should we be more in the cloud? Or where's all our data sitting? Is our security right? So there's a whole bunch of new things to which that CTO's got to get their hands around and take a way longer sight than what's normal. The other thing that the CTO has got to be very conscious of is that you're in a cycle. The cycle is that you're going to be sold in 3 to 5 years, possibly 7 if they really hold on to you. So that means you're going to go through the transaction process at a later date, and somebody's going to come in and effectively look through your underwear drawer. You got to make sure it's all clean. You got to make sure your developers are doing things in a way that's compliant, industry standards, a way that's reproducible. Even if there's no documentation, and documentation is a hallowed piece of functionality that we rarely see, but if your development processes are done in such a way, then your documentation is not as detailed. It doesn't need to be as detailed as what's needed, because any competent person can come in and see that this is the way it works. But if everything is so poorly designed and poorly architected that it requires that one guy who knows everything, then you haven't got a scalable team. So CTO's got to not only clean the house, but got to keep the house clean. It's like when we were young kids, we got to keep the house clean just in case the minister ever dropped in. Right. My mother was a very religious lady from that perspective, so But
you bring up an excellent point. We know from previous experience in going in and doing a due diligence, technical due diligence on a organization that an equity firm is considering investing in, that when you sit down in the room for that due diligence and talk to discuss the technology platform, and there's one person sitting in front of you for 2 days going over everything that they have, then there's that guy. He's the linchpin. He's the critical component, and that's a risk exposure that it may not sour the deal, but it has to be accounted for, and it'll definitely affect how the private equity firm addresses that acquisition, that new acquisition, and what their objectives are will be day one when they bring that company on board.
Yeah, and it's a hard problem to solve, because for smaller companies, we've got to service the customer, and it's sometimes easier just to let Mythical Joe do everything, and it takes a little longer to make Joe not the linchpin in everything, maybe a little bit more expensive, but that's the path to which you're on. So when the CEO is looking to hire that new CTO to take this on, we would always recommend that you identify the need for the CTO, but do a search. Make sure that the current leadership have an opportunity to recruit for the same role that they're already in effectively, because you're going to be asking that person way different questions, or the demands in that role is going to be completely different from what they were pre-PE world days. So by all means, let them have a swing at the ball, but don't assume that they're a quick shoe-in there, because the qualities to which you're looking for is somebody that has got that longer line of sight, a bit more resource planning, more strategic planning, doesn't necessarily go in and fix everything day one. That's usually your warning sign that you've got the wrong guy. If he's cranking out code within the first week of him being hired, you got the wrong guy. And to make sure that the development team understand now that you're in a new world. we've got to do the big boy business now.
Yeah.
We've got to produce big boy code and make sure that we're not cutting code for the sake of job security. We're cutting code for the sake of the company growing. And if the company grows, then, hey, I've got a role in this company, and that's wonderful. I want you to hire me because you want me, not because you need me.
Right. Well, and you don't want to see that guy, that new guy walking in the door. To your point, you don't want them rewriting the business day one, and you don't want to see them saying, "Oh, this new bleeding edge technology is very interesting and very appealing," and it's technology for the sake of technology.
Yes, those people are very dangerous to be. So we do an awful lot of vetting of that type of stuff, etc. But yes, it is a fascinating time in a business evolution, and what we find, and which is why people bring us in every so often, is that the CEO is just simply not equipped to interview that VP of engineering or that CTO, depending on and we even work with them to figure out, okay, which of those two titles do you need?
Right.
We can discuss that at a later podcast about what is the fundamental difference between a VP of engineering and a CTO, but ultimately you generally don't have the resources inside to be able to hire that person. Yes, you can do the personality side of the interview with no problems, and they seem to be fine, they seem to be
Right.
got all control of all extremities, etc.
Some better than others.
Some better than others, but do they really know how to plan? Do they know how technology evolves? Do they know all that sort of stuff? And that's where we help in. An exciting time in the business, but get it right. A CEO can literally forget about the engineering department because they've got a solid right-hand person taking those reins on.
That is their dream.
It is, because they've got way bigger problems to solve.
Yes.
Great, well, thank you very much. We'll be talking about something else later on.
It was great as always, and look forward to getting back in front of you.
Thank you. Ta-da.
Bye.